Good morning. Welcome to Viking Preparedness. I am Pastor Joe Fox. It's early. It is actually darker than it looks on this screen in here. That's amazing how the camera does that. I've been going back and forth this morning with Bear, TJ from the Bear Independent. And if you're not subscribed to his Patreon channel, you should be. He did a really good piece today that I read today. He may have done it yesterday on food storage. That's what I want to address today a little bit. Um, what he wrote, I kind of knew. He put it in different terms, more precise, because he thinks along more precise lines than I do. Um, but it was important enough that I asked him to give a presentation on this to the Shofarians this weekend. And he agreed. And so we're going to do that. And so he and I were discussing that a little bit. And then I fired up The Drudge and I started going through it. And I came across an amazing article to me, which I'll put a link to. This will probably go up first, and then I'll come back and put a link to it. Um, that scientists are trying to determine or think they have determined the limits of human endurance, which kind of goes back to some of the things we've been discussing lately. And food played a big part in it. They looked at extreme athletes, and the one thing they didn't look at, and I think it would. Why are you looking up at me like that? I think it would. I just woke up about a half hour ago. I think it would not skew, but change their results just a little bit. Um, was long-term hikers, like the Appalachian Trail and stuff like that, um, because they come to a conclusion in the article that about the max one can perform at long term is a 4,000 calorie a day diet, and they define long term as anything more than a couple weeks. Well, and they say there are events where people are consuming 6,000 calories a day, um, but even at that level, they continue to lose weight. They never stabilize, and therefore it's not sustainable. I'm pretty sure hikers, and there's a whole bunch of them, and they've been studied fairly intensely because it's fairly easy to get a hold of them. Hikers on the Appalachian Trail, through hikers, it takes them 5 to 6 months of constant forward motion to finish the Appalachian Trail, and I'm pretty sure they're consuming about 6,000 calories a day, and there's no way that over 6 months they're still continuing to lose weight. See what I mean? That wouldn't work. I'm sure when they start, I know they do. They shred weight. Rucking is good for losing weight. Um, they just shred the weight, and but then they do reach a stasis. When I went to ranger school, and again, I don't know what it's like now, but when I went to the last hard course, people in the military understand that. Um, but we all lost massive amounts of weight. My graduation picture, everybody has these sunken in cheeks and these big dark eyes. This dark, you look like little Skeletors. Um, Everybody lost weight. But then you kind of you went down to a point, and then you just kind of stayed skinny. Um, so I'm not sure that the article has done everything it needs to do. I don't know that the scientists quoted in the article have done everything they need to do as far as checking everything. So, but it was just interesting, and none of that is really the main point of what I want to talk about. I'm talking about calories and storing food. You know, I'm big on you having a robust food storage program, right? You need a lot of food stored. How do you look at that stored food? That's really where I'm going to. Folgers Instant. Yum. Um, let's say you have a year's supply of food, or 6 months supply of food, or 2 years supply of food. In your mind, how do you perceive that food? Let's just make it easy. Call it a year. You got a year's supply of food. Boom, there it is, sitting in your basement or garage or little shed or whatever. You got a year's supply for your family. You're like, all right, we're good. What happens when you get to the bottom of that year's supply of food? Have you really thought about that? You see, and TJ and I talked about this briefly today. The Bear, Independent. Um, I think even this is going to drive some Shofarians nuts. I know it is because we're going to discuss this weekend. I think even having a supply of food, that's just like a buffer. Like, I don't care how much money you spend, how much time and effort you put into the food, to the point that we delve into that food, we open up that first 5 gallon bucket and slit the top of that first mylar bag, um, we're failing. We're failing. We failed to produce enough food, so now we're having to dip into our emergency stores, and that's how I look at them. I look at them as emergency stores for the emergency. Not just an emergency has happened, therefore we're going to eat this food. No, the emergency has happened, we're existing, and now another emergency has happened, forcing us to break into our stores. Because it's non sustainable if your plan is to eat all your food storage. You always got to have a buffer. How much of a buffer do you want? I submit that whatever, again, if you decide you want a month or 6 months or a year and a half, 2 years, 3.5 years of food storage, whatever that amount that you decide on that you want to stock up, that's your buffer. So the second you start eating it, you need to figure out how you're going to replace your buffer. It's a concept in the military. In the military, well, at least in the U.S. military, but I think it's a pretty solid military principle. You need to have a reserve, and your reserve does not have a specified job. You just keep your reserve over here in reserve. I can use it to reinforce success. I can use it to bolster up where weakness or where we're failing. The line's starting to collapse. We're going to commit the reserve, and that's the phraseology. You commit your reserve. So you've got your reserve hanging back here, and when you commit it to do something, you no longer have a reserve. And so one of the things you have to immediately do upon committing your reserve is reconstitute the reserve. You got to figure something out. You always got to have a reserve back here. Pow, pow. Same thing with your food. You don't eat all your food storage and then not have any reserve. What happens if you just ate your last cream of wheat? There's nothing else. All these buckets are empty, and you have a crop failure, or the locusts come in, or fallout falls all over your crops, whatever. Um, or you can't go out because there's zombies, man. You got to stay in and eat your food reserve. Whatever, right? Um, and I know some of the things I say because I'm getting ready. I pointed over there because that's where I was sitting. I'm getting ready to read another article that said the headline on Drudge was millennial dads can't do anything DIY compared to baby boomers. And I just talked recently. I don't even know if that video's up yet. Oh yeah, that's the video that's going up today. I tried all day yesterday to load it. I'm gonna have to go somewhere today. But I talked yesterday about where I was just a few years ago and where I am now, and I get it. And so I look at things from where I sit, but I try to look at it from where you sit. And so I realize that for some of you, when I tell you, you should have a year's supply of food at a minimum, that seems almost insurmountable. And now here I'm telling you, you have a year's supply of food, but you need to have another plan so that you don't have to tap into your year's supply of food. What do you want from me, man? I want you to be totally ready for what's coming. That's what I want for you. I want you to be able to take care of yourself and your circle, and maybe even be cool to people that aren't in your circle. Be a beacon of light, right? Be able to help yourself and others. Um, that's what I want from you, man. And so, yeah, you need a year's supply of food. The bear has broken it down pretty good what you need. I am going to modify what I tell people. And you need a plan to produce food. Because food is something you require every day to be healthy. Therefore, you need to have a robust plan for food. If you look at human history, you can see how different societies, civilizations lived. And, first you've got, well, first, whatever, but you've got these hunter gatherers. Hunter gatherers go out and, kill a rabbit or a deer, grab some hickory nuts, catch a fish, dig some roots, right? Sounds like camping, man. Sounds cool. Hunter gatherers, not ideal by any stretch of the imagination. They're always on the cusp of starvation. They're always on the move. Hunter gatherer cultures are nomadic. They move around because they move into an area that they deplete the resources. They've got to go to another area to continue to hunt and gather and survive. And so moving is a negative, right? That's energy you are expending just to get from here to there. It's energy that you are not, therefore, that you don't have available to do other things. You've expended it just to move your people or your body over there. And then you got to get reset up again and restart again, rebuild your house again, even if it's just setting up your tent again. You got to do it again. And in a perilous is too strong of a word, but it's early and I haven't finished my cup of coffee yet. In a dynamic, fluid situation where there are good guys, bad guys, and guys out there, and you don't necessarily know who's who, um, moving is not necessarily your friend, right? You don't know who you're going to bump into. You don't know whose territory you are going to encroach upon, requiring them in their mind to take action against you. Um, so being a hunter gatherer is not ideal. That should be your emergency plan, right? Pace plan to I'll just go out to the woods and be like Daniel Boone, man. Um, that should never be plan A. And those cultures didn't do great. They didn't have a lot of art. They didn't have a lot of philosophy. They didn't have a lot of, just nice things. This is why we can't have nice things. Um, because all their time and energy was spent finding, resourcing calories. It's a calorie game. See, again, we're in the 21st century and we don't think about things like that at all. But when you get down to your base level, it's all a calorie game. You got to get the calories taken care of every day. It's Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Once you get your calories sorted, I really like that British word, sorted, taken care of, squared away, figured out, done with that. Once you get your calories sorted, um, you can turn your attention to other things, but not until. And so agriculture is where it's at. And again, there's levels of agriculture. And quite frankly, and wow, we could get really philosophical here, and I'd need some other people to key in. Um, we've gotten to the point with agriculture where we have turned it into an industry. It is incredibly efficient. Um, I live in chicken land, right? We drive down the road. They have 18 wheelers, tractor trailers, where the trailer is a special design, but it looks like it's the same size, 53 feet of a tractor trailer, but it's like one solid mass. It's actually not, but it looks like it on the trailer, of cages of with birds in them. I mean, I don't know. I bet you somebody knows the number of birds that are on an 18 wheeler going down the road. And they're all in their own little individual cage about this big. And I know they stick them up there with a forklift or something. And they're all cramped in there. And that's what they live their whole life in. It's disgusting, right? And they get fed through machines, and they're like getting crapped upon by the birds above them, and they're filthy and they're nasty looking. It's like you would never want to eat one of these things, and yet we eat a whole bunch of it. Cheap. It comes on a piece of styrofoam, skinless, boneless chicken breasts, chicken McNuggets, strips, drumsticks, wings, Kentucky Fried, whatever, man. The chicken is cheap because of the way we produce it. Same thing with beef. Beef is incredibly cheap because of the way we produce it. There's a reason lamb is so expensive compared to beef, because it is not, in this country, produced on an industrial scale. It's getting there. So's goat. It's getting there with people. And the same thing with veggies and everything else. It's just produced on this scale, economies of scale, that make it cheap. And therefore, we don't even. I'm getting texts from TJ. We don't even think about our calories. Most of us are fat. Most Americans are fat because calories is not a thing, but it's going to become a thing. And so, because I know there's a lot of badness that goes with the food we're eating now, too, right? And then there's the argument, well, GMOs actually save lives, GMOs hurt lives. I get it. I'm not liking that. But that's the span from you've got to go out and catch some wild bird and cook it and eat it to you can just get it mass produced and it costs nothing. And it doesn't cost any calories to get it either. And now you can have it, the cart at Walmart, waiting on you when you get there. Whatever. I'm kind of digressing. Agriculture. You really need to think about agriculture, and not specialized agriculture, not just wheat. You're going to have to think back around World War I era and before, where a farmer may grow, my main crop is wheat. I'm bringing in a lot of wheat. I'm going to take it to town and sell it, and that's what I'm going to buy my wife a dress with. And, we're going to buy our coffee for the year when I harvest my wheat. But they also grew a lot of other things, too. Do you know most farmers today don't even have a vegetable garden? Farming's an industry, man. It's kind of sad. Most farmers don't have all that stuff going on. But you need to think about that. And I know, I get it. You're in suburbia. They're like, what can I do? You can do a lot. Just like my video, that's not up yet, but by the time you see this, that came out yesterday, or no, today's Friday. I don't put a video out on Saturdays, so this should come up someday. The video I put up, you got to do the best you can with what you got where you're at. You have to learn how to produce food now. You should be producing food. Matter of fact, if I'd had this idea a month ago, I would have made it a Viking training task. So, supplemental Viking training task. For those of you who can plant something that you can eat, do it now. Actually, probably everybody can. Maybe I will make that a task. Warning order. But you should be planting food. You should be getting good at planting food and eating what you plant. And think about long term. I'm going to bring this thing back. I'm rambling because I'm just starting to wake up. Didn't have this quite planned out. You need food storage. You need more probably than you thought you did. You can't have too much food storage as long as it's properly stored. Um, but you need a plan to eat something other than your food storage. Because once you start tapping into that reserve, you need to think about how you're going to replace it. A lot to think about. It takes time. It is a significant learning curve to learn how to produce your own food. I have been growing good, robust gardens for a couple decades. I am not perfect at it, um, but I can produce food now. But it's taken me a while. Some of you are brighter than me. You'll be a quicker study, um, but you need to get started. You need to be producing food because that's all there's going to be. And there's a lot of people, man, people default to this too. I'm going to segue a little bit and come back because a lot of you, I know you are already coming up with excuses. Well, I'll be the herbalist and I'll just trade my wonderful herbal abilities and someone else can grow my food. You don't quite phrase it that way, right? But that's what you're thinking. There was this whole movement back, not movement, thought process back in the 80s in the survivalist movement that, well, me and my 5 guys will show up, we'll be ranch security. We'll tell this farmer we're going to take care of you, make sure nobody comes here and steals anything, and for that, we'll get fed. See, everybody always wants to put off the uncomfortable thoughts. It's the human nature, right? We seek to avoid pain and enhance pleasure. And so it's like, I don't know how to grow anything. I don't really want to grow anything. So I got to think a way around that. I'll use my unique, special snowflake skills to make somebody else grow my food. And what I do produce will be so valuable that people will trade me their potatoes that they planted, lovingly tended, and dug out of the ground. You want to know how valuable potatoes are? You should go look at The Revolting Man. That man put some time into his potatoes, and I tell you what, by the time his potatoes come out of the ground, he's not going to give them up lightly in an event, right? Those are going to be valuable potatoes. The cost of food will be astronomical compared to what it is now when that's all the food there is and people actually had to grow it themselves and they've got to feed their family, so what do they have left over? Now what's the value of that? Man, you need to be producing food. You're not going to be trading for it or buying it. Not in the initial stages. Not until things rebuild. All right. Think about producing food, vegetable and animal. Really doing it. Not flighty ideas. If you think your idea will work, I challenge you to put it into action. Test it out. Produce your own food. All right. I'll see you out there.